So now let's go over the various sections of the USSGL. So the first one is chart of accounts. What does this give us? Well, it gives us a standardized 6-digit account for all federal agencies to use. Now, federal agencies can add more digits to the 6, but ultimately they have to roll up into these 6 digits as it's used for reporting. I just mention this because federal financial systems are of various ages and they're used to only actually be 4 digits. So if you're in an old system, they might not even have 6 digits and they might have some workarounds. But I just want you to be aware of that. So the basic 6-digit USSGL chart of accounts has these main sections as such. You'll have the first section, or 100,000, is assets. The 200,000s are liabilities. The 300,000s are your net position, which if you think of commercial accounting, think of it like equity. The next section is 400,000, which is budgetary accounts. A little fun fact on budgetary accounts is they balance all within the 4,000 series. The next series is the 500,000, which is revenue and other financing sources. Then you have 600,000, which is your expenses. 700,000 are your gains, losses, miscellaneous items. And then 800,000 are your memorandum accounts. So now we're going to cover the chart of accounts. And you'll see here, you'll have the chart of accounts. You'll say it'll say the account number. You'll see the title, which will have the overall category and subcategory. It'll have the GL's name, and it'll have the normal debit balance. So let's take a look how to get to section 1, chart of accounts. So you'll see we'll go to the USSGL site and we'll click on part 1. Now we'll go to section 1, chart of accounts. We can either click here and it'll take us down there, or we can just scroll down. Now this case is just one file, so we'll click on it. But first we have the cover page, and then we'll open the actual chart of accounts. So you'll see here the cover page covers everything you need to know for part 1. And then when you go into the actual chart of accounts, you'll see what we showed earlier on our presentation, but you can scroll all the way down through and see, you'll be able to see the various GL accounts and categories going from assets all the way down to your memo accounts. The actual chart of accounts is approximately 23 pages long. All right, let's go to the next section, which is accounts and definitions. This section is going to give descriptions for every single account listed in the chart of accounts. It's going to give us our title of the account, the number, the normal balance, and the definition. You can see up here, for example, we have seized monetary instruments with a normal debit balance and an account number of 15310. And you'll see here is a definition. So now we're back to our USSGL website. Let's see where section 2 is. So it's right under section 1, and we'll click to see the cover page, and this particular section only has one subsection, accounts and definitions. Well, the cover page of the section is pretty short, but you'll see here in the accounts and definitions, it's a bit longer. We have 157 pages, but it covers every single GL account that was covered in the chart of accounts of great detail. So if you're doing research trying to figure out what a specific account is used for, this is going to be a good resource, as you'll actually be able to read the definition and see what that account is for. All right, let's go to section 3, which is account and transactions. This is going to provide transactions for accounting events that occur throughout the federal government. And while I say transactions, the easier way to think of it is just as journal entry. These are going to be the journal entries you need to do. This section has 4 parts. Your transaction categories, then your transaction listing, then your account transactions, and then your account transaction postings. I'm going to cover these sections, and then we're going to go and look at them live and see what we can find. So the first are just transaction groupings. from A to H. And this is going to be a code used to group transactions together which have similar purposes, such as funding sources, or maybe we're doing a collection, or maybe we're posting a year-end entry. That's where we go to section F. Okay, the next is going to be the account transaction listing. Using those codes, we're going to be able to have a definition for each of them from A to H. So how do we get to that section? So we'll go back to the TFM, USSGL. We're going to open section 3, and I'm going to show you first the cover page, and then we'll go straight to the transaction categories. So the cover page gives us our breakouts for the various transactions, as you see here, A through H, and gives us a little more information for us to use and how to read it. Now, we're in our overall account transaction categories, and you'll see it actually breaks it down into a little more detail. And now we can go to our transaction listings. You'll see here we start with A102, and it gives us a description to record an anticipated appropriation. So if you knew you needed to record an anticipated appropriation and you searched for that, probably come up with A102 as your transaction. But as you see here, you can scroll through. There are transactions for many things. That's all A's. There's a lot of A's. Then you have your B's, all the way down to your H's. It's following the similar format. They're going to give you your transaction code. Then it's going to give you your transaction description. All right. Now next is a listing of transactions by accounts. Here, you'll be able to see each general ledger account listed and then what transaction codes post to it by both debit and credit in a normal entry. All right. So to get here, you actually have to go to T accounts is what it's actually called in the USSGL site. We'll open that up and you'll see, it's the account transaction postings. So not quite sure where they got T accounts, but that's okay. You'll see here, for example, 1010 has lots of transactions that post to debit and credit, but you'll scroll here and you'll find every single GL account, and you'll see if it has transactions that post to the debit and credit and which ones. Also take note at the bottom, if you see an R or an AP, the R transactions, the USSGL transaction mentions reverse in the comment. And if it has AP, the USSGL transaction mentions also post in the comment. That's very important because you might know you need to post one transaction, but if you're not really aware, sometimes multiple transactions are used at the same time. So it tells you just have to know where to look. All right. And then the last section of this is a detailed listing of each transaction, and it's called account transactions, and it goes very specific. It'll list the exact transaction code. It'll give you that description, and then it'll lay out the budgetary and proprietary entries for each transaction. Now it's important to note that while it lists the possible GL accounts that are used to post, it doesn't mean every single GL account would be posted at the same time. You're going to have to know more details about the circumstance of your transaction, the funds being used to actually determine that. But it will tell you at the minimum what are the GL accounts that could be used. Now, some transactions are only going to be budgetary, while others are only going to be proprietary. This is important to know because budgetary accounts track the 400,000 series, which are the budgetary impact. And it's going to be very specific to tracking the status of your budgetary authority, your resources, and your total resources available. While the proprietary entries are going to track like what you own, what you owe, what you incurred, your expenses, and what are your revenues, which is a very unique aspect of federal accounting. But let's go see how we get there. Okay, we are back at the USSGL site. We're going to click on transactions now to see. And there you have it. This is what we were just looking at earlier. It's a listing of all the transactions, and it has the code, it has the description, it has a comment here, and also you have your budgetary and proprietary entries. This particular one has only budgetary entries, which makes sense because it's dealing with anticipated appropriations. But we can scroll through this possibly 200 or 341 pages, and we can see transactions, codes covering a variety of sources and actions. Okay, now let's take a moment and check ourselves on this knowledge that we just learned, using Sarah to see what she's come up with. So Sarah's talking with her manager, who says, hey, we work at a law enforcement agency, and they just seized $10,000 in cash during an investigation. Now, this cash has not yet been deposited. Could you look up the GL account and transaction code we need to use to record this seizure? So Sarah goes, sure, I can do that. And she just thinks to herself, okay, we got seized cash. I need to find the right code, how to record this transaction, and I know I need to look in the USSGL. But what part? So here's our challenge. What is the USSGL account Sarah should use to record undeposited seized cash? What transaction codes record a debit to that account? And what transaction should ultimately be used for this scenario? Let's see if we can find the answer. Okay, we're back at our favorite site, the USSGL. So let's go to the chart of accounts. All right, we're going to look for seized cash. So you can see here we have seized monetary assets, and one is seized monetary instruments, and the other is seized deposited cash. Now, if you remember, we have seized cash, but I said it wasn't deposited, so I think I know the answer, but let's hold off until we can determine this. But we'll see. It's 1531.0 and 1532.0. Okay. So let's now go to our accounts and definitions to see if this can help us out. We want 1531.0. Okay, awesome. So we can see they're both next to each other. So you'll look at this and you'll see, okay, what's the definition? Account is used to record the value of all seized monetary instruments, including undeposited cash. Now, right there, that's telling us undeposited cash, which we know we have. So you can look at the rest, but that's telling us pretty much what we're doing. But to make sure we're getting the right spot, let's look at the seized deposited cash. Now, this particular definition says it is, a cash seized by law enforcement, which is great, as we have. And it says deposited to the Department of Treasury in banks. We did not deposit. So we're pretty sure it's going to be 1531 is our GL account. Now we need to know, okay, well, what are the possible transactions we could record to debit? Because remember, this is an asset. So to increase it, you debit it. So let's go to the T accounts. Control F. So we can go 1531.0. All right. So here we have three possible debits. We have C166, D310, and E606. This on its own is not going to tell you what you're going to post, but it does narrow it down. We're not interested in the credit side because, like we mentioned, we're increasing our seized cash, so we're only going to debit. So now the last step is we should go to our transactions. Now let's get our first one. It was C166. So let's go Control F, C166. Okay, to record a monetary instrument, including undeposited seized cash. This is probably going to be our entry, debiting 1531, crediting 2990. But let's check to see what the others are. So we went D310. Let's see. And you can see how the other transactions actually reference, comment about it, our other transactions. So we'll go to D10 to record a prior year, or to record a prior period adjustment that increases the value of the prior year asset. Not what we're looking at. And then we'll go to E606. To record the transfer in of inventory items and general property, plant, and equipment from others without reimbursement. No. So what does that bring us to then? It'd be C166. So let's walk ourselves through the answer. So we mentioned we had those two potential GL accounts, but we were looking at 1531. We need more detail. We looked at the specifics of those two accounts, looked at the description, brought us to 1531. We looked up the transaction to see which transaction codes posted a debit, and then we looked them up each, and we determined that the answer was C166, which is record monetary instruments, including undeposited C's cash. So Sarah is able to tell her boss, yeah, we can record our C's cash that's not deposited to USSGL 15310, and we can use that transaction code C166. And her boss is forever grateful.